This episode of the Matt Feret Show is brought to you by the Brickhouse Agency. Brickhouse is a boutique independent health insurance agency that focuses on finding the right Medicare coverage for folks across the country. Matt's wife, Nikki, is the heart behind Brickhouse. She's great at making confusing things clear and is passionate about helping people find a Medicare insurance policy that suits their individual needs. To schedule a free one-on-one appointment with Nikki or a member of her team, head on over to brickhouseagency.com or simply call 844-844-6565 and someone will help you schedule a phone call or a Zoom meeting. The consultation is free because the insurance companies pay Brickhouse, not you. There's never any pressure or obligation to enroll. Your clearer, simpler Medicare journey is just a call or click away. brickhouseagency.com. Not affiliated with or endorsed by the government or federal Medicare program. Contacting Brickhouse Agency, LLC will direct you to a licensed insurance agent.
Hello, everyone. This is Matt Feret, author of Prepare for Medicare and Prepare for Social Security Insiders Guidebooks and online course training series. Welcome to another episode of The Matt Feret Show, where I interview insiders and experts to help light a path to successful living in midlife, retirement, and beyond. Welcome to The Matt Feret Show, practical conversations to help you thrive in midlife, retirement, and beyond. I'm Matt Feret, author of books and courses on Medicare and Social Security, and a former healthcare executive with decades of insider experience. I use that experience to help people make clearer, smarter decisions about health, wealth, lifestyle, and caregiving. Each week, I sit down with experts, insiders, and fascinating people to explore what it really takes to thrive, finding purpose, building stronger relationships, and creating a sense of meaning and community in the second half of life. Together, we'll light the path towards your wealth, wisdom, and wellness. Welcome to the conversation. You know, for most of our careers, the goal is clear. You work hard, you build your career, you save money, you prepare for retirement. But something interesting happens when people actually start to approach those moments and those important moments. Many financially prepared adults struggle to make the transition, not because of money, but because of identity. See, for decades, work provides structure, it provides purpose, it provides relationships, and a sense of progress over the years. So when retirement arrives, the real challenge may not necessarily be financial, but it is psychological. Today's guest has spent years studying what he calls the phenomenon of retirement, the emotional and social transition from career identity and to what he describes as the third age of life. It's a stage that can last 20 or even 30 years. And the question isn't just how to afford it, although that is a big question, but beyond that, it's how to design it. My guest today is Gregg Lunceford. Gregg is a managing director and wealth advisor at Mesirow Wealth Management, where he helps clients protect, preserve, and grow their assets as they approach and enter retirement. But Gregg also brings something unique to retirement planning. He holds a PhD in management and has conducted academic research on the psychology of retirement transition, which is studying how identity, purpose, and social structure influence whether people actually thrive after leaving their careers. He's also the author of Exit from Work and frequently speaks about what he calls that third age, which is that stage of life somewhere between middle age and elderhood or older adulthood, defined by reinvention, purpose, and opportunity. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. Wonderful to be here.
Yep. So I gave you an introduction. You're going to tell us more about you, but tell everybody what you do and heck, how long you've been doing it. And I think I know how you help people, but in your own words.
Well, I've been in financial services for over 30 years. Part of it was on the institutional side where I held responsibilities in corporate and investment banking. And then mid-career, I shifted to wealth management, which is where I am at today. I work with a number of clients, helping them figure out their financial futures, whether it be goal planning for retirement or college savings or the next chapter in life. But as we'll dive into a little later on, one thing happened to me maybe 15 years ago. It's getting older, maybe closer to 15 to 20 years ago. Started to recognize that there was just more to a successful transition into retirement than being able to plan for it financially. So I went back to school, got a PhD from Case Western Reserve University, where I started to study what is it that a person goes through, not in retirement, because there is a lot of study out there about retirement, but it's usually looked at through the lens of gerontology, meaning they're examining how you age, not necessarily how you thrive. And so I've researched it through a different lens, looking at what causes a person to positively thrive, or what are the emotions they feel going into the process as well as starting the process. And that's what we focus on, not just helping people figure it out financially, but setting the stage so that they can have a more holistic retirement planning process and a better experience.
Thanks for that. And, that raises a couple of questions in my mind. I think that's people probably don't anticipate that, as you found, or when they get in it, it can be really unnerving. Do you think that's one of the reasons why people who are prepared financially delay retirement? I mean, we see so many people in our business that are retiring and they call in and they're like, I'm working, I'm still 74, I'm 80. Do you
Right.
think that's one of the, so if they're financially prepared, they delay retirement even when they clearly afford it? Why does that happen?
I think that people don't understand the phenomenon, and that's how this started. So how it started for me is 2008, when we're in the mortgage crisis and people are getting laid off. So you have a unemployment rate that is double digit, and people start coming in my office asking for consultations for retirement, and we were going through all the retirement numbers, and they were getting early exit packages from their employer. So these were generous opportunities, and we were going through the numbers, and we had 3 meetings, and the numbers were they'd ask us to run it forward, we run them backwards, we run them sideways. You can afford to retire. And there was something unsettling there. And so I said to my company, I was like, there's something we don't understand. There's something else going on. And the response I got was, well, if it's something other than financial, we can't design a product around it. Why should we focus on it? And I looked at it a little differently. The better you understand your client, people, what they go through, because at the end of the day, I think the products that we use, a lot of them are commodities. The experience we create, that's the unique thing, that people want to work with people that they feel understand them, connect them, have a wisdom that can guide them. And so I went back and studied it as a researcher, which when I started to open up the research, realized that there was a research gap. That a lot of this, as I mentioned, was talked about and through the lens of gerontology, but a lot of this is psychology, sociology, and a number of other things that you have to blend all together to kind of figure out what's going on, because today's retiree is going to have an experience no other cohort has ever had, and that is we're living longer. And because we're living longer across the globe, this is an issue in every society that I am happy to discuss what my experience, what my findings are, because I feel as though it creates a better opportunity for us to thrive. The best thing you can do, in addition to wealth, to prepare for retirement, is do things that give you positive experiences as it relates to your health. And if you can combine the two, then you get a more holistic experience.
You talked about 08, 09, and the fear was what that was, right? Because you said you
Right.
talking to people and they're like, have a generous exit package. Hey, get out of here. Here's a lump sum or whatever, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, am I safe? And then you'd say, yeah, because we ran it forward. And they're like,
Right.
okay, we'll run it backward. Am I still safe? Yeah, you're still safe. Well, run it again. Like there's fear there, right?
Right.
There's environmental fear and there's age fear, right? Because it probably became unannounced at an age and a stage that they didn't anticipate. So your very first kind of inkling there, or what you found, was a psychological transition or a psychological hump that wasn't being hurdled by mere product fit. Do I roll X and do an IRA? Is my mix 90-10 or 60-40? So it's a psychological transition, not a financial one, even though, the financial one, you're telling them, dude, you're good. Like you're good either which way I slice this pie.
Absolutely. And I didn't even recognize it at the time. I mean, when I came into the industry, and you used to see commercials that kind of confirm this, but when I came to the industry, we were told it was an economic choice, that people work until they economically don't have to, and then they exit out. And I remember seeing commercials around that time with television, and I don't mean to pick on anyone, but it was one that was like, what is your retirement number? And this number was in everyone's thought bubble as they walked to work, as if as soon as they hit that number, they were going to walk in the office and say, I'm done, right? And so what I learned in this process, while people were coming back for these consultations and asking for another consultation versus making a decision, is one day a lady goes, look, I'm not worried about the money. I know this is our third meeting. It's like, I just don't know what to do with myself. And that caused me to pause and go, how could that be possible? I thought this was an economic choice. I thought you were supposed to walk out the door. I mean, it just seems so easy when you're early mid-stage career. You wish you could get a vacation day, right? And then now you have all this flexibility and freedom, and this person is like, I'm stuck. And you're going, what are you stuck with? And so that just made me curious, and I started to dig in a little bit more. But it's exactly that, and there are a number of reasons to cause this. And we can explore those as we go along, but that's exactly right. You're dealing with people where you're going, you're good. You've licked the hard part. What's so difficult? And what I learned through my studies is there are other things that make this frightening, no matter where you are financially. If you're disconnected from the things that make you feel good every day, if you're disconnected from your friends, if you're trying to figure out how to reestablish yourself, for a lot of people, no matter how successful they are, it is a hard transition.
You've talked right there in that example you gave, she may have had a bit of identity crisis, right? But it sounded like she has a structure crisis. Like, what am I going to, I mean, work starts at 8, lunch is 11:30 to 12. Work ends at 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, rinse, wash, repeat. Like,
could be all of the above. The thing is, when we enter into the workforce, right, we are primarily, when we are younger versions of ourselves, we're looking at work as it provides mainly one purpose, and that is the exchange of labor for money, right? I got to pay my rent.
Time for money. I need to pay the
Time for
rent,
money,
right?
right. I think it's not until those last few years you start to recognize that there are non-financial benefits to work. Okay. And then once you figure it out, as you figure it out, you go, I need that. So there are 3 things that work does from a non-financial standpoint. One, work provides us with psychological success. Who does not enjoy being known for being good at something, right?
Sure.
Every time you execute your role, if someone says great job, that's a positive affirmation that makes us feel good. That gives us a reason to get out of bed. That makes us feel as though we matter, whether it's a small recognition or it's a large recognition. And as I started to do my research and started to talk to people about the roles, right, even people who do things that, if you look at the work definition, don't look like they're, terribly big roles inside of institutions or in society, just the fact that someone smiles at them and says, thank you, I appreciate you always having the coffee shop open on time. We're not even talking about how I feel about the product, but just the fact that you're here to greet me with a smile makes you much different than other experiences. That warms our heart. That gives us a reason to be there. The second thing that work provides is socialization. We spend more time at work than anywhere else. And so therefore, our friends become very valuable. And even the colleagues that we don't like to work with, right? they give us something to laugh about. You get in the cafeteria, what this idiot Martin did again this morning, right? And so,
Yeah.
um, so at some point in time, you come to miss that social interaction, which is very valuable. And then the third one, you hit on it a little earlier, is we overlook the importance of structure in our day. And work provides structure of time. And so I once had someone tell me, I have my own business. They said, well, when are you gonna sell, when are you gonna retire? It's like, I don't know that I could do that. I said, why? It's like, well, I work in the business 5 days a week, and that's great. I get to see clients. I get to, be about my business in the city, go to different events and so on. So this Saturday, I got all these personal things to do, so I do that. And then Sunday, I'm bored out of my mind. I could not imagine 30 Sundays in a row. I would be bored out of my mind. So a lot of people, and this may be hard to believe, but a lot of people have difficulty inventing things to do. Walking into a work environment where they say, lunch is between these hours, or you get a break here or there, or, we had this meeting at this time. For a lot of people, that becomes necessary. And I think there's some places where, people are absent, are very challenged when they're absent structure. I look at
Yeah.
people that retire from the military, right?
Oh,
And,
yeah. I
that's
can imagine. Right.
right. And regardless of the rank or the stage, right? Just having such a regiment, beyond what we experience as civilians. But basically, there's a manual that tells you what to do at every point in time in case you're confused. A lot of people have a hard time reestablishing themselves once they leave that structure. So those three things are very important, and you have to prepare for them as you prepare for the financial piece. If not, it could be a very challenging, hard transition.
You've studied what you have called the phenomenon of retirement. Are
Mhm.
those three pieces it, or what does that phrase mean holistically?
The phenomenon is this. I touched a little bit on it earlier. Is that is different in the 21st century than any other period, and so oftentimes because the behavior going into retirement is you just do what the next person did, and so why are you leaving at 65? Oh, because they told me that was the age. Why? Because that's when Social Security pays out. Why? Well, that's what my parents did, and that's what their parents did. So the phenomena is that what do you do when you get into this period where globally we all live longer,
Hmm.
right? And so, and then you're starting to see more cognitive decline uh, from things like anxiety, depression, and things like that, which I would associate with you not having those three non-financial things to come along with work. So the phenomenon is we're living longer. We are also in a period where we don't have a structure where we picked. In the past, the system told us what to do, so you got to figure it out on your own. And then you have fewer safety nets because pension plans don't exist the way that they used to. Less than 20% of companies have formal pension plans. Those were traded out because of what happened in terms of our longevity. So companies can't afford to pay for employees to be 30 years outside of the workforce in retirement. So they gave you this 401k or this 403b or 5457 plan where you have to figure it out on your own. And so there's this fear, what if I run out of money? And then you have
Hmm.
fewer safety nets in terms of things that are major costs in retirement, such as healthcare. So when you throw them all together, it really requires a new view of retirement as well as a new action plan and understanding and number of disciplines that we don't come equipped with because we've never had to do this before.
And, going back to your 0809 example, but not necessarily the date range, simply the layoffs and unexpected layoffs with even exit packages, people downsizing. I mean, some have written that we are in a white collar recession and have been for a couple of years. That, and I've touched on this before in other podcasts with other guests. I mean, the corporate people kind of know when you're in your 50s, you're probably gonna get sniped.
Right.
And is it ageism? Is it age discrimination? Who knows? However you want to define it, it just happens. And Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But the point is that you may think 65 or 67 and a half. But that can come a lot faster, and it can be jolting. So this concept you talk about of the third age, is the third age a date or age range specific, like age 65 to 90, or is it when these events begin? So if you're laid off at 50 and you're kind of not going to get that big corporate title anymore, and you go off and mow lawns for a living, or you decide to start your own company, or you consult, or you take another job at another firm but at a lower level than you had before, anything like that, is it age bound or is it situational bound, this third age?
Well, the third age, I'll explain what it is a little bit first. The
Okay.
third age, we're used to thinking in terms of we go from our youth to middle age and then into old age.
Right.
Okay. Because we're living longer, you get this 20-year life bonus. And with third age is this recognition that you go from your early youth to middle age to this thing that's undefined now called the third age. And then you go into old age. Because when you think about it, if I am 60 and the IRS is telling me, well, we're going to calculate your your required minimum distribution using this chart, and it
Right.
assumes you're going to be 90. Now we can debate whose longevity is what, but the IRS is saying we anticipate it's going to be 90, right? So if you're telling me that I have until 90, right, and I'm 60, I'm closer to middle age than I am to old age, right? And so, 60 is the new 40. And so we're telling ourselves all of these things are sending and society is sending us these signals too, is if we're going into old age, where we really should be thinking like we're our 40 years old self and saying, what was life like when I was 40 and what was I trying to do? Well, when you were 40, you were trying to accomplish things. You were trying to be better at something. So with the third age, it's this recognition is, hey, you get to reset and be 40-ish again, right? And the reason this is the best time in life is for the first time in your life, when you got this 30-year bonus, 20-year bonus that you can do anything with, you have become who you were going to become. So you've gotten yourself educated and you've gotten yourself on your own, independent. You have satisfied all your obligations to other people. If you've raised a family, they should be adults. Maybe some people are in these situations, unfortunately, where they have to be the caregiver for other loved ones, but hopefully that doesn't take up all of their time. I know there's situations where it does. So you have more wealth than you probably have ever had in your life, because when you were a kid, you didn't have any money. It was your parents' money. And then it took you probably till you got about 30 or 40 before you even had any this extra money, right? So,
Right.
and then now you're wiser than you've ever been because you've had all these life experiences that have taught you things. And so now you enter into this age where you can define things on your own terms. You have the financial wherewithal, you have the wisdom, you should have the confidence. If you're not, it's time to build it, because a lot of this is confidence based, and you get to do whatever you want, when you want, how you want. It is the most freedom that a person could ever have at a time where they have more resources than ever. Well, and they know more than ever. So this should be the best part of your life. But if we don't come out of this view that we have watching others, a lot of people, and if you look at the history of retirement, we can go in that a little bit. It really retirement was never viewed as favorable when it started. It was really this negotiation between management and labor, where management said, we want younger employees because we're manufacturing then. So you want the person who's the fastest on the assembly line. And union labor was saying, well, we got to reward seniority because we don't want you to forget about these folks for them to become impoverished. So retirement what started off was, we're going to pay you to be at home because you have no value. If anything, you're a distraction in this work environment. If we're doing something like messing with lava or something, and you could burn someone if you didn't put the screw in tight enough. That's how they were made to feel. Whether that was true or not is a different story. But once you got the arthritis in your hand or your back or whatever, that's how they were made to feel. So it was never viewed as this positive thing. And these dates and deadlines and all that were put in, and it had a negative connotation. And so you have this emotion when really you should be feeling empowered. So going back to your initial question, is it an age or whatever? What is a third age? I tend to like to look at things in terms of stage versus age, because a lot of this is how you feel or where you're prepared to be, right? A person could do very well financially and be prepared to walk out of work in their 50s. So their third age could start 50, 55 if they wanted to. Or they could say, you know what, I just like what I'm doing. I don't want to leave until I'm 70 or 75. So the third age shift is really more of a stage. And just thinking about things that people did, later on that made them, stand out that we should be thinking about versus feeling like we're putting out the pasture. Benjamin Franklin signed the Declaration of Independence in the 70s. Colonel Sanders franchises uh, took got running in their. Franklin signed in his 80s. Colonel Sanders became successful in the 70s. And then there are plenty of people that do all kinds of awesome stuff. We think about my alma mater, Loyola of Chicago. They had Sister Jean, who just passed away last year at 106, but she resigned 2 days before the day of her death. 2 weeks before the day of her death, right? So you define it. You get to define it. And this third age is this thing is unlike anything else. But the big difference is you have to design it. Whereas before, this stage of life, someone designed for you and you followed along, which may not have been the best thing to do. It was definitely the safe thing to do. But by taking a little bit of risk and some action, you can have the best time of your life.
And it sounds like part of this third stage is reinvention, isn't it?
Absolutely. So for a lot of people, it may even include work. What you're really doing is just saying, I am redefining life on my own terms. And those terms may include some form of work, or it may include exiting altogether. The point is, you get to drive that process, but you have to structure and engineer it yourself.
What happens in your experience when someone leaves work, either voluntarily or involuntarily, without a clear vision for that third stage or what's next?
It can be very challenging. Now, it all depends. For some people, exit from work makes a lot of sense. If you are in a role that causes you a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, conflict, things like that, the exit is probably welcome and it's enjoyed. If you are in a positive environment that you enjoy, that affirms who you are, that you have a lot of work identity, whether it's tied, is driven because of what you do, who you do it with, or the brand you do it for, it can be very challenging. And it all depends on the individual, how well they do in this transition. And a lot of it has to do with their lived experiences through work. And so what do I mean by that? Well, this is where we get in a little bit into organizational behavior theory.
Oh,
Uh,
please. I'm all ears. Go. I love this stuff.
so, we were told, and so if you look at early boomers, their society told them what the definition of success was, right? And
Sure,
so
sure.
for many of them, it was go in a corporation, you stay there for 30, 40 years, you get to go watch, and you go as high up the pyramid as you possibly can. So they had traditional careers. And so they developed traditional values. And it was really more of, I'm not successful if I'm not advancing the way people see me. And so what they were doing is following paths people told them they ought to do. So there was this development of what is called in psychology the ought self. You're an actor on stage. From the time that you were a little kid, someone asked you what you wanted to be. Your guidance counselor worked with you on what you want to be. And so whether it be doctor, lawyer, chief, something over there, someone was preparing you for this audition you were going to have for this role. And if you successfully went through life getting through these auditions, one day you passed the bar exam and you're an attorney. One day you're a judge or whatever it is. But
Yep.
you are developing this odd self, right? And where this is really hard, I think, and I'm generalizing here, is for some of the early boomers, because they came through in the most traditional society. We all did to some extent, but it was really, you didn't really get an opportunity to tell your parents like you can now. I think I want to drop out of school and start a computer company in the garage, right? Or I want to be an influencer. I see a different path than the formal path that you're showing me. And so, for many of them, they felt definitely on this traditional track. And so they never developed their idea self. The idea self is who you really want to be. And the wonderful thing about the third age is this is the opportunity for a lot of people for the first time to develop their ideal self, their own identity of what they wanted it to be. And so it's always interesting to me when I sit down and I talk to very successful people, and we can define success in a number of ways, but people who went that traditional track, get up the ladder, all of that, top of the pyramid. And I say, well, what do you want to do after I explain this phenomena to them and say, you actually can do whatever you want is more than just being able to financially do. And they're like, I've been wrestling with this for a while. This makes sense to me. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And they'll come back and they say, I want to join a rock band. We get together with some guys and we jam on the weekend. I want to write mystery novels. I get a lot of people to say they want to go to Florida or work part-time at Disney just to goof off during the day and play with kids. It is so far from who they actually are. And what I started to notice is that for a lot of these people, they never got to develop who they wanted to be, or ideally, because those weren't things, especially if you came on a traditional track, those weren't things that people viewed as acceptable things. I think about, an interview I saw with John F. Kennedy where, Jacqueline Kennedy told him, acting was not really a real profession he should aspire to, right? I mean, you're Kennedy, right? You should be a writer. And then so he forms George Magazine, right? And did he really enjoy that as much as, when he made a cameo on a TV show or whatever? There was always this back and forth. But the point being is now's an opportunity, and the third age is about developing the idea self so that this discrimination between the ought self and the idea self, it shrinks. And that's what brings us positivity. That's what causes us to thrive. The wider the gap is, that's what brings regret, because then you get on your deathbed and you go, I wish I would have done what I really wanted to do. And that's not what you want to do. To make retirement really awesome is when you shrink this distance and you get after and you, for the first time, take advocacy for yourself and get it.
So if I'm listening or watching right now, and I'm following you point by point, if I'm listening or watching right now and I am in one of two places, I'm either near that third age and I haven't thought about any of this yet, or I'm in it and maybe I've been in it for a few years and I've not done this type. And, maybe it is 5 years and I'm getting bored. I'm thinking to go working at Home Depot on the weekends or doing that Disney World, job or, something just like I haven't had a plan, or I did. And I checked off all the things on my bucket list, and there's only so much golf I can play. Like,
Absolutely.
two people. One is I'm almost there, but I haven't thought of this. Oh God, what do I do? And then the second persona is I'm 5 years into this. I haven't been doing this. What do I do now?
Yeah, so it's funny when I was studying this, one of my classmates came to me and was like, I thought about what you presented the other day. He's like, I have this neighbor that walks up to me every day and goes, I failed retirement. I never understood what he meant, because the guy had sold a very successful company and now I get it. He's just like, he's bored out of his mind. So what I would say is, as you're starting to think about, first of all, think about the things and write out the things that really bring you joy from your work environment and leave the financial things out off the table, right? The other thing is you're trying to redefine things on your own terms, right? You got to figure out what your terms are. And for a lot of us, because we've had terms dictated to us, because work is a unilateral contract. Basically, you say, I need some money, and your employer says, I need these things done, non-negotiable. Either you do them or you don't. And if you do them well, you can stay as long as we can keep you, right? It's a unilateral contract. This is the first time where you get to sit down and you get to structure something on your own terms. And the interesting thing to me is the people that I see that are the happiest are the people who are brave enough to structure things on their own terms and then go and negotiate with them. And so you mentioned ageism. There are a number of institutions that probably will welcome the idea, especially smaller ones, where, they cannot afford expensive human resources. So you say, you know what, I really only want to be here 20 hours a week, or I really only want to be here seasonally, or really want to do these things only or whatever, they can maybe figure out a way to fit you in as a contractor or something like that. That might be welcome, but they are not going to approach you with this. One, they don't want to give the appearance that they're discriminating against you, especially if it could trigger an ageism lawsuit, right? And so the people that I see that are most successful are the people that will go and negotiate on their own. Now, I think there are a couple things you have to do when you negotiate on your own. First of all, it's very scary. You got to be brave, right? But for a lot of people, if I go in and I say that, I really want to redefine my work a certain way, it could be viewed as a lack of commitment. And the next time we have a downsizing, I'm going to be the first one to get hit, right?
Sure.
So it is a brave thing to do, right? The second thing I think you have to be prepared to do is you have to be able to not explain what you want, but you have to explain why it is valuable to the institution and how you would help out and why it's a win-win for everyone, right?
Yeah, you got to give them their whiff and what's in it for
You
me.
got,
Yeah.
absolutely. It has to be a win-win all around. And I think the other thing that you have to do is as you redefine your terms, what you got to engage in is, and this is why you mentioned the bucket list. This is why the bucket list doesn't work. Bucket list came along when people had a short period to retire in, and they had some resources, and they said, I'm just going to get all these things done I didn't do because I know, looking at my family history or whatever, I probably got 5 years to do it. Or my back is killing me. I know I'm not going to be able to walk up the stairs in Greece. I got to get it done now. So but when you have, 20 years of health because of advances in medicine and all of that kind of stuff, and you get it done, that's not, the bucket list doesn't work. So what you really should be looking for is a way to engage in what we call meaningful play. Okay, these are the aspects of the things that you do every day that are fun for you, that don't feel like work. So there are probably things that you do as a podcaster that just don't feel like work to you. And then there are things you do as a podcaster, you're like, I wish I didn't have to do it. So what you have to figure out is what are the things that you can engage in that are meaningful play, and how do you negotiate and show that they bring value to that organization? So I'll give you an example. One of the people that I interviewed with, this is one of my favorite stories to tell. He was pretty thoughtful about all of this, even before we start to be able to see it from a research standpoint or anything like that. It was in his gut. And part of this was because he was successful. He was fortunate enough to be an HR person, right? And so he basically went to his employer, and he was brave enough because he was comfortable in this environment, and said, look, this is what I'm going to do. I had 70 direct reports. I am willing to let go of my 70 direct reports because I realized we have to do some succession planning. And I realized that in 3 years, this is probably going to be a tougher conversation. So how about we do this? If you let me help you choose my successor, they can take my direct reports right now, but I keep my title, and my job is to groom my successor. Well, this is good for the company because now they have a great coach with institutional knowledge and lots of career experience that can develop talent for them, this new level of talent. And they said, well, I'm going to do that for 3 days a week. They said, very good. They said, well, then there are a number of causes and institutions that we support around the city, and we give to philanthropically. I want to volunteer for one. So they get a free executive on the firm for 1 day a week. And that's only going to get you great PR, which it did. And so he got to choose, because a lot of times we tell people either your work is a binary choice, either you're in or you're out. He got to choose. He got to figure out if he really wanted to hold on to work longer, and if he could cut back his hours. He got to figure out if he really just wanted to volunteer, where he had less commitment to work on that 1 day with that organization. And then the 5th day of the week, he was like, I just want a day off. He got to decide if a full lifestyle of leisure was right for him. And he did.
I would imagine, though, at that point, though, you've got to be pretty okay with the worst case outcome, right? Because because right. I mean, if it's, right, you've been in corporate, so have I. If there's any one little inkling that you're not in it to win it, you're on that list, that next reduction in force list or whatever. I mean, that's a thing, right? So you got to be super confident.
You
Like
got to be super
if
confident what
yeah,
you do. But I will argue that there have been some examples where this is played out, where if you looked at like some examples in corporate America where it's created success for the company that you can now point to. So, for instance, the movie The Intern with Bobby De Niro and Anne Hathaway. I don't know if you saw that one, but he was basically
oh man, I have
retired.
such a bad memory of movies. I'm at the age and stage, Greg, where I will go, hey, Nikki, wife, right? Hey, Nikki, I don't think we've ever watched this, and she'll just turn and go, yeah, we did. And then I'll go, okay, well, I don't remember it. And I legitimately don't remember it. And she's like, and then the guy dies in 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I don't keep that stuff in my head, but go ahead. Yes,
The storyline is
I'm aware there's a movie with Bobby De Niro in it.
the storyline is De Niro is a 70-year-old widow who goes back to work for Anne Hathaway as her intern. Well, companies like Goldman Sachs and I think a few others have had what they call not the internship, but the returnship. And
Oh, that's funny.
so there's an example you can point to and say, how about you just consider me a return and give me a 1099? Here's some examples where it's worked. Eli Lilly and I believe it's Procter and Gamble formed a joint venture where they allow retired researchers and executives to come back and work in an innovation lab. And the amount of innovation that has come out of this lab has been great for the company. And what they want is they just want to come back, a couple of days a week or, seasonally for a month or so and brainstorm a project and develop it. And maybe it works and it's the next big thing through R&D, or maybe it doesn't, but they're given the freedom to do that and it keeps them alert and things like that. There was also a company in Central Ohio. There was a cosmetics company that realized how much work it was outsourcing. So it allowed its retirees to come back and take the outsourced work. And what they noticed is they didn't have to pay benefits. Everybody got to hang out with their friends, and that the wait list for work was so long, not because they financially needed it, because they needed to get out of the house. This was a way for them to structure their third age, keeping a
Yeah.
little of their work identity, but also being able to have the freedom to go and do a bunch of other things. And for a lot of people, if you can't get it on your own, then entrepreneurship might be the path you take, where maybe you convert a hobby to something that you find fun and you can make money on. So for instance, I had a colleague when I was working that every year he would go to Europe, would grab a backpack, stay in a 2-star hotel and just take pictures, and came back and we said, hey, Jim, you need to have an art show. Well, he's like, oh, those are just things I do for fun. And he started framing the stuff and, now he sells his art and that's his side hustle. And so he goes and he's converted into a small business for himself, but he's really engaging and he's really engaging in meaningful play.
It's meaningful play, but I'm glad you hit the entrepreneurship piece because, I mean, you mentioned them earlier on and, Colonel Sanders and his secret recipe. And then I think the most recent example is I forget his name. It's the NVIDIA founder. I mean, only really found success in his 50s and mid 50s when he started that firm. But the entrepreneurship piece is, I mean, I think I read in the Wall Street Journal in the last couple of weeks, the number of new LLC or businesses started up. It broke all sorts of records over the last 12 months. So either out of desire or necessity or both, that's something that not a lot of people, and certainly not a lot of guests, have ever touched on before. So yes, there's retirement, redefinition, volunteering, taking a different job, going into a think tank at a big company. But what about the entrepreneurship route? And I don't just mean a side hustle, right? And I don't mean, of course, taking your entire nest egg and throwing it into a company, but something more than, have an art show with your pictures. Well, super cool, but not as big as throw $1 million into a startup and go through series of fundings, A, B, and C.
Right.
That middle ground of like, what I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to, I don't know, buy a lawn company and scale it. You know what I mean? Like somewhere in the middle there. Do you see that a lot? And do you see that as
I think it's becoming more frequent.
Okay.
I think it's becoming more frequent. One, through ageism. Two, I want to be committed to something, but I want to set the terms of that commitment. And entrepreneurship is what gives you that, right? And so, because it allows you to, hey, if there are aspects of my work I don't like, I'll just hire an assistant to do those aspects of my work, right? And so It allows us to be fun and exciting and invigorating for a lot of people. When it comes to this thing, though, because then there's the wealth advisor in me, there are just some things I caution people on. Number one, I think you just hit on it, is you got to do this in such a way that you don't put your nest egg at risk, right? You've saved up for this thing and you are in retirement. You're just redefining retirement. That even though the financial aspects of retirement aren't as much of a primary driver as they once were, these more social emotional things are becoming larger factors. It is still the number one driver. So the best thing for retirement is to be able to financially do it. So if you're going to take on meaningful play through entrepreneurship, you got to do it in such a way that you do not threaten that nest egg. So this is where you have to have conversations about what is the liability that you're going to incur. And you got to insure against things, and you got to manage cash flow. And, to the extent that you take on liabilities, maybe you do that with 1099 contract employees versus employees that you might have in a formal retirement plan where you got to fully fund the plan, whether you have a good year or not. There are just certain risks and liabilities that you got to plan against there. Else it will go quickly from being meaningful play to being work, which is what you just came out of. So what was the point?
Yeah, no, I hear that. Do you think when people do that can that sometimes be, I don't know, avoidance, right? Because if they could retire and they just say, well, I mean, like the example you gave of the guy in Florida said he failed retirement and he's bored. And the people that, the guy was like, Sunday is boring to me. I can't imagine 30 Sundays. Okay, fine. So I would imagine a lot of those people jump into, I've always wanted to buy that lawn care company and scale it, and I'm going to go do it. Is that normally because, well, you tell me in your experience and in your research, is that because they're avoiding potentially having those identity?
They're having a hard time maybe forming their new identity, their third age identity, or breaking away and not realizing that you don't have to completely give up either, right? You can form a new one and keep aspects of the old one. They just don't know how to do it. And when you don't know how to do it, it can lead to dysfunctional behavior as well as cognitive decline, anxiety, depression, things like that we don't want to avoid. The largest cost in retirement is healthcare. So my motivation for all of this as an advisor was, if I can keep you wealthy and healthy longer, right? That's great for all parties involved. And then you get to have a great time. And, I don't have to worry about, does this plan or projection work or not? And you get to do all these things. So it's a win-win all around. So when I first started this, Matt, one of the things I was trying to figure out, because this is a phenomenon, we're living longer, things like that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to look for a group of people that retired financially well off with 30 years of life expectancy in front of them, and how did they behave. And I just kept thinking through this. Where would I find it? And then one day it dawned on me: professional athletes. You're leaving the game in your 20s or 30s. You got plenty of life in front of you. You have plenty of financial resources if you did it right. And then you started going, well, how do they end up broke? And then I started reading articles and periodicals where executives were starting to show the same behaviors in retirement that we got out of athletes. I used to walk in a room and everybody knows to me, nobody cares. All my friends are gone. The moment I got released from the team, the bus took off and all my buddies were on the bus with me. Matter of fact, I may not even gotten to say goodbye, depending on how it was done, right? And so they're feeling this disconnect. Who am I? I know I'm Dr. So-and-so, but if I no longer am affiliated with a hospital, am I still doctor in the community or am I not? A lot of people start to struggle with this stuff. And so what I was starting to notice is it wasn't that the athlete was unique at all. They were just human, and everybody else, if given 30 years of life 30 years of life expectancy after they built the nest egg, had the same opportunity to blow the nest egg, whether it was, and we're talking about entrepreneurship here. I went into that venture deal. Why? I didn't have anything to do, so I thought I would try something, right? Um, I'm starting to be combative, and cranky. Why is he cranky? He doesn't have any friends. Like, you know, I'm playing bingo 3 times a week. I don't like bingo. I can't stand being here, right? It's just like you didn't know how to reset or develop a new identity or set any goals. And when you think about it, from the time you were playing Pop Warner at 7, this coach was telling you how to become a better person, how to audition for that job on stage, right? And you were getting through the auditions and you became very good at what you did. And then all of a sudden, you're told you can't audition anymore. The same thing is happening to the 55, 60-year-old if they don't understand the third age and they need to develop the third age identity. Before, the lifespan was so short that nobody really even noticed. And then I question, this is just me, no evidence of this, but did Uncle Bob really develop dementia because he was getting older, as was seen through the lens of gerontology? Or was Uncle Bob sad, depressed because he no longer had any meaning or purpose, so he just went into negative decline? It's probably a little bit of both.
Right. No, it probably is.
Yeah.
All right. So fast, and that's fascinating, by the way. I mean, yeah, you did hear, and I guess you still do, but I remember the whole spate of news stories of, from Allen Iverson all the way to, people who made a lot of money and then went bankrupt. And those were, I mean, honestly, unfair hit pieces back when they were coming, especially in the 2000s and 2010s. Yeah, I don't know if you hear about it so much. What I've noticed more lately in terms of professional athletes is guys retiring early, even in the middle of contracts, not medically retire either. Jason Worlds is a Virginia Tech Hokie. That's how I know him. Right. I remember him. He got drafted by Pittsburgh. I think he was 2 or 3 years in, massive contract, and went, nope, I'm done. And now he's farming. Yeah, Andrew Luck, another one. Some guy from the 49ers just did it this last go around? No, Bears center just retired unexpectedly. But they're not doing it necessarily out of medically retiring. They're doing it because I guess they've done the work to go like, I have enough and I know what I'm doing next or what I'd like to do, and I'm going to go build it. They've seemingly gone through some of this. What do I really want to do now that I have enough? Not necessarily a $50 million contract, but I got 10 million and that's enough for what I want to do.
And I think there are more resources now to help them think through that than there were in the past, right? Just like we're going to need those resources to help us think through it, So for a number of people, they're going to need a good life coach, a career coach, right? And for some people go, well, what's the purpose that I don't understand what they do? A lot of that is thinking through some of these things here, asking yourself the big who am I question, and people go, well, that's silly. Well, you strip away a few resources and push someone to another community or something like that, you'll quickly start to feel that disconnect there. And so I think people are now starting to, I know Major League Baseball a number of years ago started to develop off-season internship programs where people learned how to go into a car dealership and maybe be a salesman or something like that. Just not necessarily you're going to make the money you made in the league or anything like that, but just to make you feel as though you have purpose and meaning if the music ever stopped in the sport. And I think that's what this third age is all about. When you are no longer offered any of those other auditions for the things that you were trained for, what's your next move?
Fast forward. Now we went from middle-aged back to athletes retiring at age 28, but I'm going to go on the 70s or 80s or even 90s. You picture someone who is truly thriving now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Mm-hmm. What are they doing differently today? And what did they do differently to get there?
Yeah. So for a number of people, well, let me step back here. One big driver of this is vision. You have to form a retirement identity and vision. And if you have a partner, it's very important that that's a shared vision, right? Because you can't just go, I think I want to start, become, I want to join the military and jump out of planes, right? And the other person doesn't want to jump out of planes, right? It has to be a shared vision, and it has to be agreed upon. What I think people are doing is that they're recognizing this phenomenon. They are also figuring out a couple of things. Social relationships have been shown to be a big driver in all of this. Okay, now a couple things you can do in terms of building your social relationships, because that's how you get to the month of Sundays, right? I have nothing to do all day and no one to do it with, right? Or people are doing things, but I don't want to do that because how many times do you go bowling? I don't find that enjoyable. So before you go into this third age, or while you're developing into this third age, I think it's very important for you to develop social relationships that will last the whole period. So I write it in my book, Exit from Work. I'll just share it for now. There's one chapter where I talk about, there's a chapter called Laddering Bonds and Buddies. And so in finance, there's a technique we use where we ladder bonds. So in order to have the income you need every quarter, there's a bond that matures that provides that liquidity for you. You should be structuring your social relationships the same way you structure your bond portfolio. You should have people who are in your social circle that are one generation ahead of you and one generation behind you. Why? If everybody in my generation dies one day, I have no more friends.
That's a very practical reason.
Right? And so
Right.
I may have planned for this thing, but it didn't work. And so you have to figure out how to come out of your comfort zone. You may not want to talk to a 40 something about, do they want to go see the Lizzo concert? But it's always fun to learn something new, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you to learn how to line dance or anything like that, as well as for the person who's a cohort ahead of you, there is some wisdom that you can take from them that may help you understand your third age better, right? And so you're creating this ladder. So so that's number one. Make sure that, and what I see them doing is making sure they have ways to engage all the time. The second one is in developing those social relationships, we have to recognize that when we started moving from this industrial age to where we are, a number of things that happened in terms of guaranteeing our social networks went away. When we started off in a farming society, our whole family worked the farm. So you had a bunch of brothers and sisters that lived in the house with you and a bunch of cousins that lived next door, and you were dependent on each other, right? And so those social relationships just went on generation after generation, in addition to the friends you found in town. Then when we got into this manufacturing society, well, I don't need my cousins to help the crop come up in order for me to eat. So now I get to be an independent producer. So it doesn't really matter. So you start to see the spread out of families. So I used to be in small town Georgia, but now I have a job in Athens, or I have a job in Atlanta, and we don't have to have this close proximity. But at least you had close proximity under your roof in terms of the nuclear family. Well, then you get into this period in the 50s and 60s where divorce becomes more acceptable. And so even that starts to spread out. And so what you're not guaranteed from in terms of social relationships is that you will have kinships that are close by when you get this time of great freedom in your third age. And so the other thing that you have to start thinking about is how do you replace kinships with friendships? And you have to be intentional. That bond ladder, that buddy ladder is one way of doing it, but you got to be intentional in terms of going out, figuring out other things. And this is where the structure of your lifestyle becomes important. So I always tell people, I don't know the creators of the show did this intentionally or it was just an accident, but one of the great models I think a lot of people are going to move to, one, because a lot of people can't financially afford to retire, and two, whether you can or not, you need social relationships. The television show The Golden Girls. When you look at this, now the ladies crack this up, but when you really look at it and you think about it, you have Sophia and Dorothy that have a kinship, a mother-daughter kinship, but it's not enough. And so they take on two roommates in terms of Blanche and Rose that bring in friendships to replace those kinships. And the reason those ladies are thriving at that stage of life is because when we think about the things that we replace and work, psychological success, there was always something going on in their house. They were doing something, whether it was, dating, baking, building something. There was even a spinoff of the show where they went and bought a hotel and tried to become entrepreneurs again, to our earlier discussion, right? So
I
there was
forgot
always
about that.
something.
Yeah, they did, didn't they?
Right. So they were the perfect example of it, right? And so that was one. And then the socialization piece of it. Once again, they were always doing something amongst themselves or their different buddies, once again, dating, all of those things. They created that model. And then because whether they needed to financially or not, they split the rent 4 ways. So it lowered the cost of retirement. So when I say the difference with the third age is you have to design it yourself. You're going to have to think outside of the box about what makes this work. And the key things are going to be what causes you financial success and longevity, what gives you psychological success, what structures your day, and socialization. Those are the key things you should be thinking about in this design.
Those are key things to not only that design, but I mean, heck, they're key things for you and key things for me as
Absolutely.
humans, right? All the way through. You just got to be intentional about it. Greg, it's been fascinating. You mentioned your book. Tell everybody about the book. Tell everybody about where we can come find you, where we can watch you, where we can learn more about you, and how, if people want help through this or help with wealth management plus this background, how people can find you.
Yes, this is my book, Exit from Work. It can be found on Amazon.com. What it basically does in very layman's terms, it breaks down some of the things that I came up in my studies and explains some of the things that we talked about. So people, one, understand the phenomena and give some tactics that you can use to start to set yourself up for your third age identity. For people that want to know more about me, if you go to our firm's website, Mesirow.com, and you put in my name in the search engine, or if you just type Gregg Lunceford and Mesirow into your search engine, you will see my profile pop up. You will see a list of all my publications, my interviews, things like that, where to get the book, as well as other things that I've done. If you want to drop me an email, my email link is there as well.
Awesome. And of course, we'll have all of that link in the show notes on the episode page as well. Greg, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for having it.
Thanks for having me, Matt. I've enjoyed it.
And for everybody listening or watching, I think what stands out to me, again, but definitely driven home by Greg, is that retirement isn't simply about leaving work. It's not a binary switch on off. It's about designing the next chapter of life with intention, and that has to happen before. And if it doesn't happen before, and you're already kind of in it, maybe do it after. It's never too late to plan this stuff. So when people approach this stage with clarity and purpose and curiosity about what comes next, it seems to me, talking with Greg, that they build stronger wealth and deeper wisdom and greater wellness and a lot better connections to their world and to their life and their family. Anyway, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I'm Matt Feret Show, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining me on the Matt Feret Show. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with a friend and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're on Apple or Spotify, a quick rating or review really helps more people discover the show. For more resources, visit themattferetshow.com and sign up for the Matt Feret newsletter. And if you or someone you care for needs Medicare guidance, book a no-obligation consultation at brickhouseagency.com. Helping people make smarter choices as they age is my passion. This show is here to light the path towards your wealth, wisdom, and wellness. Thanks for being a part of the conversation.
The Matt Feret Show, related content, publications, and MF Media LLC is in no way associated, endorsed, or authorized by any governmental agency, including the Social Security Administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, or the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The Matt Feret Show is in no way associated with, authorized, approved, endorsed, nor in any way affiliated with any company, trademark names, or other marks mentioned or referenced in or on The Matt Feret Show. Any such mention is for purpose of reference only. Any advice, generalized statistics, or opinions expressed are strictly those of the host and guests of The Matt Feret Show. Although every effort has been made to ensure the contents of The Matt Feret Show and related content are correct and complete, laws and regulations change quickly and often. The ideas and opinions expressed on The Matt Feret Show aren't meant to replace the sage advice of healthcare, insurance, financial planning, accounting, or legal professionals. You are responsible for your financial decisions. It is your sole responsibility to independently evaluate the accuracy, correctness, or completeness of the content, services, and products of, and associated with, The Matt Feret Show, MF Media LLC, and any related content or publications. The thoughts and opinions expressed on The Matt Feret Show are those of the host and The Matt Feret Show guests only, and are not the thoughts and opinions of any current or former employer of the host or guests of The Matt Feret Show, nor is The Matt Feret Show made by, on behalf of, or endorsed or approved by any current or former employer of the host or guests of The Matt Feret Show.